Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I will be talking about photography. This is going to be a story time. Basically me talking about how I started photography, how I found photography, and basically like my creative journey with it. I thought it might be a little bit interesting to talk about this since I didn't start out thinking I wanted to do photography at all. I didn't even start out liking photography that much, but yeah, let me just tell you the story. Since I was 5 to 7 years old. I forget how old I was precisely. I think I was 7 years old and I was doing ballet. And I trained for many years. And for a long time, I wanted to be a professional ballerina. Now, if you look at my body type and if you look at me and you know me in person, then you know that I'm not cut out for ballet, and also my body and my feet were not built for pointe. So it was kind of like I had this passion for ballet and it was like basically all I knew, and I loved it so much, and I was so frustrated and insecure that I wasn't good enough at ballet, that I couldn't do ballet. And since I was homeschooled at this time, so I didn't really have anyone my age that I was seeing that wasn't in ballet. So it was like, I love ballet so much, but I'm no good at it. So yeah, I was like a little bit sad at this point. So then all of a sudden, I had like this camera, like this video camera. It was like from Sony, I think, and it could take pictures. It was like this flip video camera. I think I still have it. It's probably somewhere in my sister's room though. But I loved that thing, and I used it all the time. It was auto. It didn't have like any kind of room for manual mode. I just was point shooting, but I didn't really have much interest in doing that right away until there was, I think, a spring performance for ballet. And there was a teacher who kind of like had like this little bit of a side job. Well, not a side job, but she did photography for the company, right? Because the company that we were part of at that time, they didn't have money to hire a photographer, so they had this teacher who also worked in the company basically take her camera and shoot like shows and shoot the dancers basically. So I was doing that because I don't think I was in this show because I was not in the company and I was not able to be in the show. So I decided to just shoot photos with her. And it was kind of like I I fell in love with it right then. I fell in love with the idea that I could do something that really like no one else my age could do. I could take pictures and people liked pictures of themselves, and it was something that I actually felt useful doing. So like little by little I would get more and more into photography. We ended up going to Moscow that summer and I was shooting everything. I was very good at finding like little details that no one was seeing. I would zoom into like different plants, and I would like photograph like really like zoomed in images of like a tulip petal, but there would be like raindrops on the tulip, and then I would take a mushroom and photograph that, stuff like that, like stuff that was really zoomed in at that time. And then I also had a fashion blog, and I was photographing, like I would ask my sister to photograph me. She would hate it, but then she like would refuse to photograph me, so I figured out like cool ways to take photos of myself. So like at this point I had like a passing interest in photography. I was interested enough in photography that I was sort of like taking it up as a hobby, and I was slowly building myself up. I was also really into art and drawing and painting, so I was doing that. But then gradually, a little by little, I realized that even though I loved painting and I loved art and all that, I just wasn't passionate about it. I mean, I was good at it, but I wasn't passionate about it. And I kind of felt like I would be creating an image with like painting and watercolor and all that, it would take me so long. And even if it took me like the longest time, even if it took me several weeks to create like a portrait of somebody, it wouldn't look as good as I wanted it to, because at the time I was really into realism. So it was frustrating to me that like no matter what I or anybody else created, it didn't look like the grandmasters. It didn't look like the old time oil paintings. Like that's what I wanted to create. Like, I wanted to paint like I literally wanted to paint like Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Like I wanted to paint something that looked like that. Which, as you can probably tell, isn't possible. I mean, like, even artists, like, around, like, that are alive today that paint pictures of, like, for example, the royal family, they can't paint something like that. It's not like they can't, but, like, not a lot of people can do it, you know? It's impossible for the typical person, like, little me, to paint like that. So, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm doing photography. So, I started doing photography and eventually got a camera, and it was, like, the most basic camera. I started shooting with it. So I started shooting like pretty much everything. At this point, I think now I was back in public school. Like I was done with homeschooling and I was in public school and I was like shooting not a lot, like not nearly as much as I shoot now, but I would basically be going to like every single ballet performance, and if I wasn't dancing, then I'd be shooting. And since I had that new camera, I was able to photograph in low light better, and I was able to adjust the shutter speed, and I was slowly like sort of teaching myself camera settings. I wasn't really any good at camera settings, I can definitely tell you that. I was kind of like, what I would do is I would just change ISO like up and down, and I would keep it like high up, and I wouldn't really change like aperture or anything else. I didn't even know what that was. But yeah, it was interesting. Eventually, what ended up happening was like fast forward. I'm just gonna like I don't want it to be a super long video. I just want to tell you like how I started photography and like how like I developed my skill, you know. But in the middle of sophomore year, it was time to pick classes, and for whatever reason, I think I picked photojournalism, which is like a good class in theory, but in my school, I happened to be like I think it was no actually no I picked principles of photography, and at my high school like that was if like you had never that was a class I took that if you had never held a camera before, that was a class that you took. And by this point I think I had been doing photography for at least 3 years. I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to think about, like just go back that far. But I was doing photography for a long time, and I remember I had a meeting with my counselor. My counselor at this time, she was so amazing. She ended up being transferred to another part of the school, but she was like so amazing. Me and my best friend, we loved her so much. Basically, like she tells me, you are telling me that you have been doing photography for a while, so like why are you signing up for this class? And I was like, well, I thought this was the class that I was supposed to sign up for. So she tells me like, no, you should be in commercial photography. And this was, I think, in March or April. So like the deadline to apply for the class was the beginning of February, and I missed the deadline by like several months. She's like, look, honey, just go to the class. I don't think she said honey, but yeah, I think she just said, go to the teacher, I'll give you the number. Don't tell her I sent you, because I don't want to get into trouble because I'm not supposed to do this, but just don't tell her I sent you, but just go and say that you heard that she's a commercial photography teacher and you want an application or you want to apply. I was like shaking in my boots. I was like, I don't want her to be mad at me. So I basically dragged my best friend Leo. You guys have seen him on my channel. I think he was in my best friend's react to my first videos. But anyway, he came with me. I basically dragged him into the room with me, and the minute I walked in, I was like, I need to be in this room. Like, I need to take this class. It was such a big rush that I felt, because I was like, I need to be in, like, this is like the place for me. And like Leo was like, you need to do this. So I basically talked to the teacher, and she was like, okay, fine, just bring in some photos. And I brought them in, and she lets me in the class because apparently she really liked my photography. But anyway, long story short, I basically went that entire year and I learned so much. It was amazing because I learned so much. That teacher was like amazing. I'm actually going to visit her in the fall when school starts. But yeah, like it was such an amazing experience, that class. And then I also went to the advanced photography class, which was the level after commercial photography. So I ended up doing advanced photography senior year, and now I graduated. But like, yeah, I learned a lot of stuff in advanced photography as well. I also was able to expand basically my repertoire, if you will, because being in a class for photography meant that I had assignments, and I couldn't just do what I wanted to. I had to do what I was told to do, right? So I couldn't just not take photos of architecture. I had to take photos of architecture, and I couldn't just not do photos of still life. I had to do still life, you know? So that experience gave me the opportunity to really just expand my love of photography, because since we were given so many assignments, like from portraits to sports. The first time I went to a football game was to photograph it in the fall of senior year. That was the first time I went to a football game. I was just in the senior section. I was like way down in the bleachers. Everyone was like, "Yeah, go Eagles!" And I was like taking a picture with my camera, and I would I would zoom into the photos after when I was editing them, and I used to see like half the football team staring at me. They're like, what is this bitch doing? But yeah, I mean, I ended up expanding like my love of photography by trying out like all these different mediums of photography that I never like had an interest in. And because of that, now I can definitely say that I tend to be more interested in portraits and architecture. Like those are the two that I'm very interested in. But I also love photographing like landscapes and things like that, you know? And I would never have had this like sort of epiphany, I guess, if I hadn't taken that class. And I definitely think that I will be continuing like photography my entire life. Oh yeah, that's Mr. UPS guy. But anyway, yeah, my point is I will be continuing with photography my entire life. I don't see myself stopping, and I know that, yeah, Anya, you're young, you don't know what you're saying, but you're probably gonna change. I know that, but I can tell you that like I'm like 99% sure I'll never stop taking photos, even if it doesn't end up being my career. I don't have I don't know what I'll do yet in my life, but I know that I will never quit like photography as like a hobby, at least, because like it's the most amazing thing to me. It makes me feel so happy inside. I love it. It's amazing. My camera has a name, and his name is Mark. He's my best friend. You know, I have best friends. That are human. But anyway, yeah, I hope that this was an interesting video to you. It was really rambly, I do have to say, but basically like the tips, let me just close with some tips that I have for you if you're thinking of starting photography. Number one, you should, like, if you are a beginner, you should be basically learning about camera settings, and I actually have a video coming up talking all about camera settings. So if you don't know camera settings, watch that video, because if you are a young photographer, you need to know camera settings. Even if you don't want to use them, learn them, because they will help you a lot. Also, if possible, if you're in high school or if you're in school, take photography. Take photography and learn as much as you can. Don't think that just because you don't like an assignment that you shouldn't do it, or that you should do it half-assed, because you'll never know, honestly. Like the most boring assignment can turn into like an assignment that you absolutely love. So never, like, if you're in a photography class, never do a sloppy assignment. And I have done sloppy assignments, yeah, but it was because I was sleep deprived and I had like a day to do it, and I was taking AP and IB classes. So yeah, you can like blow over an assignment. Just don't blow off an assignment more than 10% of the time, because like that's just lazy. Like, I mean, if you are in a photography class, like really do your best, do the best that you can do. I mean, I definitely know that there were times in my photography class and in photography in general that it would be like late at night and I would be up like at 3 a.m. because I was trying to get the perfect photo, you know. And I would have like the weirdest ideas. I can like go into all of my weird photography ideas. Some of them have worked, some of them have not. I think it would be a pretty embarrassing video, honestly, but I think it might inspire some of you if I put something like that up. The crazy photo shoot ideas I've had for photography. But yeah, so that's pretty much the end of this video. So I hope that this might have been interesting for you. I definitely think that Sometimes like you don't know what will be your passion. You don't know what you'll be good at. I definitely didn't ever think that I would be good at photography. I just didn't see myself doing it, and I was never around anyone that was interested in photography whatsoever. So it was kind of like me making my own path for myself. And now, I mean, everyone around me knows that my camera is literally attached to my hip. Like, that's just my thing. I'm going to be doing a lot of photography content on this channel. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you know by now how much I am obsessed with photography, so I figured I would sort of answer some questions by doing some videos. Maybe at some point I could show you guys like how to use Photoshop and how to use editing and like things that I wish that I knew about photography, you know, like that stuff. So anyway, this channel, I have a lot of different kinds of videos. Photography is definitely one of the things that I talk about, so if you want to check the channel out, be sure to look down below and it will be there for you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story time, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.